and in this video I want to share with you my very first time at the Pa Gya Literary Festival in Accra. This was a 3-day event and I had such an amazing time, so I need to give you like a play-by-play. So here's how we're going to do this. I took like clips and stuff like that while I was there. And then I also took notes on the different panels and performances that I sat through. So I'm going to share, we're going to unpack the different topics that were discussed, the different people that were showcased, and how overall I really enjoyed the event. All right, day one. Day one. First, I still have their program. Isn't this awesome? Like, look at the professional. Is it going to, do you see this? No, but do you see this? And they had merchandise. That's where I got this t-shirt. On day one, I attended a panel in the evening, which was called The Story in Time and Space. The panelists will explore the relevance and connectedness of place and time in storytelling and how the lived space shapes our literature. I thought the discussion was insightful. Some of the things that stood out to me was speaking on Ghana's history and like a comparison of how you normally go to a museum to learn the history of a place. While for Ghana, yes, there are museums here, but the history is not dead. To be in a museum, the history is still alive and present and all around you, like right now. Learning about Ghana's history is more about what's already around you and how time and space is moving things in terms of migrations of people and how that affects or how that influences language and culture here. Now, day two, what for me was a full day experience. This was on Saturday. I was there from 9 a.m. and I left at like 8-something p.m. So in the morning, I did a workshop that was called Business of Writing. The content that we went over in this workshop was good. We went over how to find clarity in your why. Like, why are you choosing to write? It was organized like, here are like 10 rules or 10 habits you need to be a writer. And then in between that, he would ask the classroom questions on, how that rule could be implemented into what they want to do or what they're trying to create. In addition to that, for me personally, when I signed up to the workshop, I looked at just like the title and I thought that a workshop that's titled Business of Writing would also entail information about how to monetize your writing, how to pitch it to publications, how do you need an agent, what to look out for, what would a perfect agent be for you. Next item on my agenda is storytelling through graphic art and comics. Pat Massioni with Nana Yao Sapong. And it was facilitated through l'Institut Français du Ghana. He is a graphic artist and comic illustrator originally from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and got to learn about his background, how he got started, what kind of inspired him to do the work that he does, because the stories that he illustrates are not fantasy. He's more in the like history and current events realm. So one of the topics, length, which he shared at length on, was being an artist that is putting out work that's speaking out on corruption, that's speaking out on history, on violence, on human rights, and living in a country like at that time, the Congo, where those sorts of things are not respected or they're deemed to be a threat. He also spoke about his most recent project, which we all got a copy of, which was this. This is Elmina Cape Coast's Ancestral Journey into Walls of Pain. So it is a graphic novel by him that gives kind of a shortened version of the story of what happened at Elmina Cape Coast, in particular the Elmina Castle. And he explained, in terms of the inspiration behind it, is that, as you may know, 2019 was the year of return. So we had a whole lot of tourists and people coming to Ghana for the first time, and definitely spending time at Elmina Castle. And at that time, he took note that you would see a whole lot of young people there at Elmina Castle with their phones, taking selfies and videos and things like that. And it really struck him as such an interesting image to see, because this was a castle that what happened at this castle is extremely sensitive and extremely devastating. And to see the space, fast forward and see the space being experienced by people who were removed from the space due to what happened there, and are kind of like, not kind of celebrating, kind of shocking, but also using new technology to retell the story to the world, really. Because most everybody who was on their phones and stuff, they're posting it on social media about what they were experiencing. And he found that to be very striking, and he incorporated that in the book. Then I asked him to sign it, and he did. And look, it's like he did a whole drawing in the book. Isn't that so cool? I hope you can see it. Can you see it? Is it showing it? Is it showing? There you go. Isn't that cool? Isn't that neat? And he he did it just right there, and okay, I don't want to say 2 seconds. Okay, maybe it took like a minute, but it was so cool. I was like, that's so neat. So this book is extra special. Yes. So this particular book is extra special. Yes. So overall, I really enjoyed the discussion, and I look forward to seeing the other projects that he's going to do. The next panel discussion I attended, Literary Criticism in the Development of the Ghanaian Book Industry. I loved how they opened this discussion saying, if books are not talked about, they die. And then the rest of the discussion basically further emphasized the importance of how the book industry in Ghana, one of the biggest things that it needs to improve on is having book reviews and book critiques for books that are published in Ghana. But there also could be systems put in place to give incentives for people to critique them and review them. Then there also needs to be certain things in place to get people who are actually qualified to review and critique books, so that it's not only reviews coming from people who they read it and say it was boring because they don't like books, but also critiqued by people who either have studied the topic or are writers themselves or are critics themselves in some way. Now, flipping it to the other side, they also spoke about the culture of criticism in Ghana. So we're not going to say everybody in Ghana feels this way, but the overall premise is that any sort of criticism is negative and a personal insult to you, your mother, and your chihuahua. So nobody likes it, and everybody gets really, really defensive about it and will not listen to you the moment you start criticizing them, and will lunge into a lecture as to how they should never be criticized, which obviously is not the best environment then to have cogent, profound, intellectual reviews and critiques about somebody's book if it is received as you are insulting the author or insulting who's in the book. But overall, the discussion was more catered to everybody, all the panelists taking note of what needs to change and what needs to be done. Next, after that, I decided to indulge myself and look at the books that were available for purchase. And they had multiple tables with different books. I looked at all of them. They all seemed like really cool books. And I really was just looking at what grabbed me. Okay, I wasn't really looking for a specific, particular book. So the first book I got was this one. It is called The 100 Wells of Salaga. Salaga. My apologies if I did not pronounce that right. By Aisha Haruna Atta. The 100 Wells of Salaga explores the depths of female friendship in this stirringly intimate reimagining of life in pre-colonial Ghana. This captivating novel establishes Aisha Haruna Atta as one of the most distinctive voices of the contemporary literary scene. So that's the book. And it was it was published in 2018. The next panel I sat in was Critic Reading Writing with Ato Kweson, moderated by Kwabena Opoku Ajeman. This also was a really interesting panel discussion. He has this YouTube channel called Critic Reading Writing. He's also done many other writings and written a book and all this good stuff, and he's noted as one of Ghana's most important intellectuals to date. He explained that he started the YouTube channel around the time after George Floyd's murder and the Black Lives Matter shift and movement. He speaks on certain topics, kind of also giving intellectual critique on those topics. And he gave an example, because now he's like working on the next group of videos that he's going to do. And he gave an example of how he speaks on he'll speak on a story that's like African folklore. And take note of how in African folklore stories, the earth talks. Like the trees talk, the animals talk, the bugs talk. Everything has a personality around us. And he noted how if you dig deeper in that, what would the earth say to us humans? And what does that mean due to how we are treating the environment and things and unpack it further and further and further, which is really cool. It also was great to hear what was the inspiration behind it and how he's incorporating his own skill set as being a scholar himself and translating it to the digital space and being able to even engage even further in discussions that you may not have only through publishing a book or sitting in a classroom, which I think further showcases the amazing possibilities the digital space, the internet, and YouTube provide. Now, one thing I must take note of that was spoken about in this panel that I gotta push back on a little bit is that he made the comment that Black creators or Black content creators don't do intellectual content, or there's not enough doing them intellectual content, or the majority of them are only doing entertainment, sports, gossip, or enraged, extreme, opinionated content. I don't fully agree with the notion that Black content creators, what the most of them are doing or the most are not doing. Because I feel like regardless of how much time you may spend on YouTube or online, I always feel like I'm only seeing the tip of an iceberg because it's so vast and because the algorithm works in different ways, and I know I'm not seeing everything. For example, I have Black intellectual content on my feed, but I didn't have to type in Black intellectual content in order to get it. A lot of it was just pushed to me due to the other stuff I was watching or interacting with. For example, there's a YouTuber called Amanda Mariana, and she is a college student currently, and her videos are almost her videos remind me of this is an essay translated into a YouTube video. So she discussed topics like being raised on the internet, or the Instagram informational industrial complex, or the shy, awkward Black girl character trend, or the evolution of being woke. And in these videos, she's not enraged. She's very calm the entire time. And she even does like footnotes of full, like, this is the quote of where she got this information from. You can tell she did her research, and she really provides both or all sides of the topic, as well as let you know which of those sides resonates the most with her, but also allowing her audience to think for themselves and further discuss the topic in comments or anywhere else. I think there's possibly more of that content out there than we realize. And let's just add another nuance to that while we're here, especially since part of the panel discussion was about racism in America. The type of interactions Black content creators have to maneuver, navigate, tolerate are not all positive. The criticism is not constructive, and some of it can be quite disgusting and unnerving, which could also influence whether that sort of content goes viral or not, or whether that particular content creator will put themselves out there as much as they could, or whether they feel safe voicing their analysis and discussion and opinion on a certain topic. Another layer to that is how these platforms treat certain content creators versus other content creators based off of their skin tone, based off of what they look like, which can also influence whether you come across certain videos or come across certain channels. And for this panel discussion, they were primarily speaking about YouTube only. But if you throw in TikTok in there, you also then add a whole other endless plethora of intellectual content with footnotes and books and documentaries and credits to back it up. That is why I would not fully agree with the idea or the notion that Black content creators, even though they are, the notion that, well, Black content creators are doing well in terms of redefining beauty standards and redefining how you should look at Black spaces on any part of the world, but the intellectual side is not really there. It's like, no, actually, we're hitting everything. Okay, Black content creators, I think, are actually hitting everything. The bigger question or caveat to that is the access, and which is another discussion as to why some of them go into their own streaming service or their own platforms away from the platforms that are more readily accessible, like YouTube. But that's a whole other discussion. But that's what came up in my mind while listening to that panel discussion. So I really enjoyed it, and I really loved. I'm always excited to find another YouTube channel or something to support. Final panel that I attended on Saturday. Hold on. Okay. From Homegrown to World Stage, an editorial journey with Mamle Wolu and Susan Rich. This is Kaya Girl by Mamle Wolu. And this is the book that this panel discussion was about. Now, I read this book. Now, let's take a side note, okay? I read this book last year. My parents picked it up when they were leaving, because they came to visit the holidays of December 2019 and January 2020. And I believe they picked it up at the airport. Is that where the bookstore was? I think so. They picked it up. They both read it and absolutely loved it. And they gave it to me and I read it and absolutely loved it. Now, it is now currently, or this year and last year, is now part of like the book curriculum or the reading curriculum in Ghana schools here. So it's a big deal. And it's really like a really beautiful story. So if you haven't read this, you need to. Now, it is now going to be published in the US. And this particular panel discussion was speaking on how the experience the author, Mamle, and her editor, Susan, went through in rewriting or re-editing the book for a US market. That version of the book is, as she told us, like double the size of this book due to the amount of explaining involved. So this Kaya Girl, the book, the way it illustrates the story, which is it's a very like authentic Ghanaian story. So if you're someone who is familiar with Makala Market, the importance of fabric shopping, the differences or the dynamics between people from the north and people from the south in Ghana, this book really will resonate with you. The editor, which I thought was exciting too, the editor is the same editor who worked with Lemony Snicket. You do know who that is? Do you know who that is? Anyway, I absolutely loved A Series of Unfortunate Events. Like, I read those books back when they were coming out. So I also had like the anticipation when every new book came out. And I loved the way the book was designed because it was like smaller with the little jagged like pages and stuff. Yeah. Anyways, the importance of having a universal theme in your story in order to, I guess, bridge the gap for a foreign market. So even though to somebody who's never been to Ghana, they might not fully know what you're talking about in the book, but due to the themes in the book, every human being can resonate with what these characters are going through and how they end up at the other end. The discussions on how to edit Kaya Girl, I took note that a lot of it was trying very hard to not dilute the story or remove the spice and the flavor from the story in order for someone who's not from here to understand it. And that's where language came into play a lot. The example was car park. Here you call it car park. In America, you call it parking lot. So do you keep the term car park or do you change it to parking lot? But if you change it to parking lot, does it remove the authenticity of the story? You see how beautiful language is, even though it's all still English? So I found that really, really fascinating. And it was also lovely because for this particular panel, I could also tell that like everybody in the audience were fans of the book. Okay, like so everyone, like so there was a certain understanding for everyone in the room of wanting to understand what this experience is, wanting to see the next edition, as well as feeling encouraged that the next edition will be as good or possibly even better than the first, and to hear how much effort has been put in to make sure the story is still as authentic and rich as the original edition. So that was really cool. I'm really excited. Like, yes, I have this version, but I'm definitely going to be getting the second version too. And you should check it out too when it comes out. So that was a lovely panel and discussion. Day 3, the last day. All right, so this is Sunday now. The first thing I saw on Sunday was dramatic reading, The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives, directed by Alice Johnson. This was an awesome production and story. It was so captivating. Like you really felt like you were inside the story. And kudos to, I forget her name now, but there was a girl at the end who had to do narrating. Plus she played the daughter and she played the son and she played the doctor. I was like, girl, you better with your acting skills. Let's go. So anyway, everybody did very well.
The medicine man promised instant results. Ah, glory be to God. That means we don't have to use all the powder in order not to draw suspicions to ourselves. We can no longer settle for half measures. Definitely. Baba Segi has taken Bolane to the hospital. So we must be quick. It is the law.
Reading and discussion from Moon Girls. First, let's go over Moon Girls is a comic book series created here in Ghana. If you have not heard of it, you should check it out. Each chapter is actually available online for you to download and enjoy. I first heard about Moon Girls some months ago through the newsletter Africa No Filter. The panel discussion for this was the only panel with youth involved that I attended. Overall discussion spoke about African fantasy. So they kind of took, like Moon Girls is the basis for the discussion, but they broadened the scope. And the points that they made during this discussion were along the lines of African fantasy is a space where you can have representation of marginalized groups in Africa and in Ghana, as well as representation or truly analyzing or discussing or holding accountable topics and experiences that are usually shoved under the rug, and how what you are exposed to when you are brought up or when you're growing up really does influence the type of adult you are or influence the trajectory of how much time it takes for you to learn who you are. Yes. Next panel I attended was Repatriating Language, Culture, and Community. This was also an awesome panel. It was also hybrid where everybody else was on Zoom, except for like one of the moderators and then those of us who were in the room. And this included people from Brazil, from the Navajo Nation in the US, and the UK, and South Africa. A very international panel, which I was really like glad and excited about, because I'm all for encouraging this bridging of Africa and its diaspora, and taking note that the diaspora is beyond the US and the UK. So being able to see this literary community of Africa's diaspora and representing different aspects of that, I thought was really, really beautiful. Something that he said, like, language is coded history. And he gave the example of the word hour, H-O-U-R, in, forgive me, I think he meant I think he said the Ga language. I think. Don't quote me on that because I forgot to note it when I was listening. Like when you translate the word hour, H-O-U-R, it means bells or bells ringing, which he further unpacks to mean the concept of time, or the concept that an hour has passed, came with churches ringing a bell in Ghana, which means the concept of time came with the colonizers, of dividing up time by hour. I was like, yes! Which, for me, okay, further unpacks that to the content the Black intellectual content I've seen online, unpacking this notion that Black people are always late, or there's colored people time, as in we are always on a different time zone. But what if Indigenous people are just aligned with time, just like nature is aligned with time? which doesn't follow the Western historically colonizer way of it must be man-made. Isn't that fascinating? That's something to think about, that you can joke that people are always late, but maybe the time they came was actually the right time. Maybe you, with your man-made situation, are limiting the experience you could have if you were more aligned with natural time. The next panel discussion that I attended was Art as Resistance with Mensa and Pa Gya, moderated by Rahim Munir, also known as Sway Kid. And it was also a cogent conversation speaking about their both respective art and how it's evolved and what sort of issues come into play as an artist speaking from the heart and touching on subjects that are considered taboo or controversial. So something I like that they said is, Pidgin is not only a language but a lifestyle. It's taking things from everywhere and making it your own. The point they were making was that your art, this notion of like trying to push out into on a global scale, your art needs to be authentic and as specific and local as possible for it to actually do that. If you try to just copy what's happening on the global scale, you then get lost in the noise. Thought it was interesting that the types of comments that were made during this panel, like how the system that's in place now is more, I'm paraphrasing, okay, don't get mad at the messenger, but the system that's in place now in Ghana is more oppressive than the colonial system that was removed. Let that marinate for a moment. What does that tell you about this notion of progress or development or where we're headed? If what is being done now to one's own people would never be tolerated if colonizers were doing it. Let that marinate and reflect and write in your journal, because we're not here to get anybody in trouble. But I really appreciated that diversity of perspectives and the audacity to say things as it is. Final activity was a live performance. This was the Live Across Africa, a riveting poetry performance by various poets from across the continent. The talent was amazing. I loved the poetry. I loved the characters. I loved the stories they were saying. Did a great job. And I will link to the YouTube channel where you can see the full version of their performances. So that is all of the stuff that I experienced at the Pa Gya Literary Festival in Accra. 3 days. Overall, I must say that this was one of the most enjoyable events I have attended here in Ghana as a whole, and that I have attended in a really long time. And the reasoning for that is that I felt that the programming for this event was really top notch. Like, it was really intentional, from the topics for each panel, the topics for each workshop, the people that spoke on each workshop and panel. It was so, like, nobody was biding their time just talking hot air. Like, this was substance, this was intellectual, this was analyzing, this was diversity of perspectives and experiences. It was really cool, and I really appreciate that. I will link the website as well in this post so you can check them out and be ready for their next event. If you are looking for a space to invest because you got monies to invest, you should give all your monies to them. Like really, like they know what they are doing. They did that. They understood the assignment. This festival was giving what it needed to give. The entire team behind this festival, I hope they get all of their flowers because y'all really did that. Really did a good job because there were so many, I could see there were so many moving parts physically and virtually, since this was something that was also being streamed live on multiple platforms. So like, y'all did that. Like, yes. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know. First question. Have you been to this festival before? Did you know this festival existed? Are you coming next year? Okay, answer any of those in number 1. Number 2, which part of the different panels I shared with you, which one of them, which topic resonated with you the most? What other perspectives or nuances would you like to add to the discussion? Share with me in the comments. And 3, what workshop or panel topic would you like to see at the festival next year? You never know, maybe the team might watch this video or look at the comments and be like, cool, that's a cool idea, right? So that's number 3, let me know. Share with me below so we can continue the conversation. Ooh, full disclaimer. I attended the event at my own accord. This is not a sponsored or endorsed video. So everything I shared is truly what I felt. Okay? Okay. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe. I'll see you next time.